Welcome back to the chaos. It's called Street Scene Power Hour, and I am Greg Roten with hosts Rick Guerrera and John Lesaganich, and we are back to ruin your ears. Or viewing your life. Yeah, we're here to ruin your life. We want to welcome our guest, Bob Swarm.
Welcome, Bob. Welcome.
We're going to get to you in just a second. Car shows are kind of wrapping up now. Mm-hmm. There's still a few going on in the weekly, shows. I haven't been to any, and since Rhea and Rick went up to Bug Infestation. But Rick, I know you hit a couple.
I hit the Cars and Canines down at Columbiana at the Angels for Animals on Sunday. Mm-hmm. That was a pretty nice one. They had a lot of different cars there. A couple of high-end cars there, and there was one Mercedes. Was it a Mercedes? Oh my God, or BMW? Boy, was it? No, it's a Porsche GTR 3. Oh my God, it was this thing just built for the track, and someone told me it was a $250,000 car.
Is that a car from our friend?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay,
I don't believe so. It was something different. Yeah, and then there was this other car there. You guys would really appreciate this one. It was a 55 Porsche Continental, they called it. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Did you ever hear of the Continental? It came out. It was badged 1 year as a Continental, and then Ford sued Porsche for using the Continental name.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the two-seater. I don't know what those, but boy, this thing was a beauty. 1955 Continental Porsche, and what it was is girl and her husband were there. It was this girl's grandfather's car who left it to her. Okay, he had the car since 1973, I think she told me.
Oh, lucky she is.
Yeah, and then they sent it to Cleveland for a 5-year restoration. What a beauty! It was beautiful.
Imagine the bucks in that. Our Bob can attest to how much that would have cost. So.
Yeah. I think that car was spoken about when we had our two guests on the Porsche local club, and they mentioned that that's only one of, I don't know, I'm going to say 10, one of 5 out there, and it's locally. And I could recall them mentioning that car. That's $100,000 plus vehicle.
Yeah, I asked her. I didn't want to ask her how much it was worth. I always go around. I said, "How much you got this insured for?" And then she goes, I said, "You got it for over 100,000." She goes, "Well over 100,000." So it was a beauty. I got pictures of it. I have to show you guys. But
that's a big ticket car.
Yeah, I think it had the 1500 engine. Does that sound right?
I don't know, Greg. It could be.
I don't know.
The Volkswagen. It was a Volkswagen engine, I guess.
Oh, was it?
Right?
Well, what year was that again?
55.
55. Yeah.
Well, what did the Volkswagens have? They had Volkswagen engines, or did they have Porsche?
1200.
12 and 1300. Yeah.
The 1200 came. Well, at least VW world. The 1200 came in right from the beginning as a 25 horse, then up to 36, 40, and then they got the 1300 and only 66.
Were they all Volkswagen engines, or were they Porsche engines, or Porsche engines?
They look
Porsche, the same though.
They designed the engine to begin with, so but they don't share really any components, but they're a flat 4. So
so to the sides there.
That's always a good show to go to. Cars, Cats, and Canines. Everything goes to Angels for Animals. We are animal lovers here at this show. So
my girlfriend went. We took the grandkids, and they walked through the cat place there.
Oh no!
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't even take my kids to the pound because we come home with something. We come home with a dog, Yeah. So no, but good, Rick. John, explain your picture back there behind you.
Okay, behind me is the Route 66 diner on Route 66, right outside of Oklahoma. You said just outside of Missouri, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's right over the Missouri border, if I remember right, because I've been there.
Yeah, and what's interesting, just to show the how Rick is such a good interviewer, I told him it was the Route 66 diner, and he said, "Where is that?" And I said, Route 66.
Well, I knew that, but I didn't know where I would sit. Route 66 goes from like...
I told Bob before he started this, we have to rip on Rick a little bit, because that's the way it just works.
Rick, I'm just jabbing you. But anyway, that I was thinking of what screen to put in the back, because I'm using this new computer that I can now use a virtual screen. And I was going through I'm clearing out the back garage, just to let you know what we're doing. I'm clearing out the back garage, getting rid of a lot of stuff I had, finding some pretty cool stuff that I kept, and ran across this brochure I had for a car that I picked up outside of Oklahoma. That's when I took that picture, and it was an Alfa Romeo 164. They made them, I think, 86 and 85. It was their four-door sedan, their luxury model. Shortly after that, Fiat, I think, bought them out. And what I like about getting these old cars, as we were saying pre-recording here, you learn a lot about them. I just get a kick out of that because every car, and Rob will attest to this, every car, every model, every make has its little concerns and problems that may be different than the other. And I learned quickly on Alfa Romeos, unless you're an Alfa Romeo mechanic, you pop that hood and you wonder what you're looking at. If you have somebody else do it, you better have some deep pockets. Mm-hmm. So that's what the screen is in the back. As for what I'm doing, I picked up the Whizzer.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's still not running, but I picked it up. That's a whole nother story. I picked it up.
Next time.
Yeah, but found I hope to get him on as a guest, found a really cool two brothers shop in Vienna. Recently opened up. I think it's called Brothers Motorsports. We may get them on.
Okay.
Drove down there and showed them the Whizzer, and they work on everything. I mean, everything. And so it's down there, and I told them, I says, look, I don't want to go through what I went through. If you guys look at it, if you don't want to work on it, just let me know. I'll do it myself slowly if you want. And they said, no, we'll take. So it's down there. We'll see what happens. But that's a 48 Whizzer motorbike. I'd love to get it running. Hopefully it'll get it running, and then we'll have some good fall weather, and I'll get to cruise around with it. As for cars, contacted a few on some VW Beetles. Matter of fact, Jim had a show last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Pretty good show. I didn't get out there, but kind of in a slow period here. I want to get both my garage and my son-in-law's garage cleaned up. We just kept on throwing stuff back there, and we just got to go through it
real quick. Yeah.
Oh my! Well, I just want to get it cleaned up.
Accumulates.
Yeah. And we're really, once we get my son-in-law's garage cleaned up, I'm really looking at purchasing a rack. Maybe,
okay.
Because so much, you could do so much more with a rack.
Oh yeah,
I like racks. Racks are good.
Yeah. Yep. Well, no, Rick. You see, Rick, you misunderstood.
Oh my God! How does this always turn into something bad with you?
You misunderstood.
Went over your head there,
let me rephrase it. We're thinking about
it didn't. I just try not to react to it because until John had to.
No, we're thinking about getting a lift.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, okay. There you go. But anyway, but that's what I've been doing. So, working, cleaning, and just like that. That's all.
Good. Yep. So, you know what? We have Bob Swarm, and he does car restorations. And, you know, there's a million questions up here and a million comments I have up here, too, because, you know, I restore cars on the side as a hobby. But John, I'm going to have you kind of run the show here today. I'm kind of feeling under the weather. Cool. So you dig in right now.
Well, okay. I was, and again, this show is watched all over
all over the world.
All over the world. We get emails from New Zealand,
Russia, Iran,
North Korea. Oh yeah, okay. He's full of it, by the way. But we do have some viewers out of the country. We do actually.
Yeah, we do. So I was talking to my son-in-law and my daughter, who Robert had actually went to school with them and are friends with them. And they said that my son-in-law says, you know, who you ought to get on the show? And he said, he tells me Robert's name. And I says, well, and I'll be honest with you. I said, well, what's he doing? He says, oh, you've never been down to his shop. And I found out where his shop was. And I actually was down there one time years ago. And this is what I like, focusing in on local guys. And you could watch all those TV shows, you know, those 30-minute redo a car TV shows. But when you walk into these shops where these guys really do it hands-on, so I went down to the shop, talked to Robert. He has a great history, how he got involved with this. The shop is packed. And I thought, man, you're going to be a great guest. I want people to know what's involved in restoration. You know, so many people, so many people.
Yeah.
Think, let me buy that car and hey, honey, look, they can redo that in 30 minutes. Watch on TV. Well, it doesn't.
I have to break a lot of hearts.
Yeah.
TV is not the way it is, and
if you kill some dreams and we break some hearts in the very beginning.
Yeah. If you just to set it clear, you know, I was involved with the Fat and the Furious when I was here. And you know, they're great guys. They got a shop. You know, Tommy Christmas is right down the road here. Great guys. Show's fake. I'm gonna be honest with you, it is. But you know, they do it to get views, and same with a lot of the Motor Trend shows. Roadkill is my favorite because they actually go through the crap. It's not fake, but 99% of the shows are fake. They have to do it to get ratings because they make it reality shows. But what Bob does is real, and it's nothing like what they show you on the shows, and I guarantee it. So
our show's fake too, Bob.
Yeah. Rick's fake.
I got the script.
I'm an AI.
Yeah. Well, soon we won't be AI, so we won't have to do this anymore. I'll just put it through the computer and let them do it. So.
But Robert has a show. Could I call you Bob?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Bob has a not a show, a shop. Does some great stuff. Pretty packed right now. When I was down there, Bob, your stuff to the gill. You need a bigger space, but so go.
I say no to that because, you know, a few years ago before COVID, we had 4 guys on the floor plus myself plus an office girl, and now it's only me. So I've given some cars back. Unfortunately, I can't meet timelines if people have timelines, but I'm really honest with them. You know, I tell them if you're in a hurry and you need to take it, there's no hard feelings here. You know.
Well, tell it. What's the name of your shop? Where you located?
Where you located?
Called Universal Paint, and it's in Austintown, Ohio.
Okay. And what do you do? You restore cars, or what do you do?
Full restoration, full metal reconstruction. We've gotten cars rotted in half. We've done full custom jobs, chop tops. We don't do any lead work. It doesn't last, so we don't do it. But I came out of the heavy collision world. So
there you go.
20 years ago, I started applying the things that I learned in the heavy collision world to these classic cars. And it just made all the difference in the world. Frame rail replacements, floor pan replacements, using the modern rust preventative primers and the inner panel coatings, things that I can get longevity out of it. And in my own car, basically I did my own car, and I went to back when they had the Super Nationals in Canfield. And the car was sitting just so, it was a purple 68 Camaro, and the car was sitting just so on a hill a little bit, and the hot rod guys were looking at it, and they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, we're leaving to go to A&W. It's just what everybody did." He said, "You might want to stick around, you know." And of course that year I got an award, but I also got my first restoration job. And the guy from Cleveland that had a 68 Camaro, and it was very early days of Detroit Speed. And Detroit Speed started hand making a lot of really performance pro touring products for these cars. Now they did the full chassis on the car, and I did the body and everything on the car. And the guy rips the shit out of this car. I mean, he takes it out and he beats the snot out of it, but it still looks great. And that kind of kicked off. It was one after another. And then one day I was more busy doing the restoration stuff at nights and weekends than my day job. And I said, what am I doing? You know, I had a friend that has a Fab Limousine, and he said, why don't you come down here and we'll work it out for the first year. You fix our stuff. I won't charge you any rent. Just get yourself going and see how it works out.
I remember Fab Limousine. We used to do, when I worked at the TV station, we did all their commercial spots. Yeah. So I remember that. Yep.
And I don't want to digress, but Bob, how about what Fab did to his shop?
Yeah.
What if anybody, is that open to the public?
Well,
Yeah, and I know we're getting off subject, but I just
I'm proud of those guys. You know, they took something, and Mark gets an idea and he runs with it. Kim kind of backfills everything and makes it run. He always thought, you know, he bought that big building because he had the smaller building over on New Road, and they kept hitting the poles in the building, and the repair work, it cost him so much to fix the cars that they bought this big building. And then it was so big, he didn't know what to do with it. So, you know, he was trying to backfill it with different things. But he always thought having a restaurant bar inside would help with what they do. Their bus trips, their bus tours, big enough area where everybody can mingle around. And the bus trips went away, but, you know, now he does dart leagues. He does pool leagues. He has indoor bocce courts. It's really amazing.
It's unbelievable. Really we need to get together, us three, me, you, and Mark, and get a car show going on there. And have some inside.
Me and Mike Sotomora at Mike's Prestige Detailing, we've talked about a Cars and Coffee because we have a huge parking.
Yeah.
And Mike is very energetic, you know, and I am not. So I can follow through, but I need someone to say, hey,
kicking the butt. There, go.
Cars and Coffee, you know.
Mike is like the detailer's detailer around this area. A lot of the guys, a lot of the hot rodders have Mike do their cars for them, and he does a really good job.
So look what we're identifying here. We bring Bob in because I want to focus in on local talents, and Bob's a guest, and we introduce 2 or 3 other local talents that are well known, and that's what this show is all about, and that's what this area is all about. But Bob, so you did there was a Camaro, right?
Did the Camaro, and then we fell into this other job, and I'm still working the collision job, but that car started taking off on its own, and then from that guy I got another guy, and that guy I got another guy, and at the time I was working out of my small 3-car garage at home. You take one car apart in a 3-car garage, and you have
garage is full.
You have a half space. Yeah. So I didn't want to move down there, but he made the offer right. He made it work for me.
Yeah.
And 4 years later, he was expanding his business on the mechanical side. So he says, either you have the whole back of the building and renovate it and make it work for you, or you got to go. So I said, well, moving 50 feet over, you know, is a lot easier than moving down the block or somewhere down the block. I couldn't even fathom it, moving paint booths and parts.
And that's expensive because you know what? When just to interrupt real quick, I remember when we first got involved with it was Buckeye Auto Restoration with Nate Miller.
Nate Miller,
Yeah, when we went out there, he was out in Ellsworth, and he had a small shop, but he had a big, nice, brand new paint booth. And I'll never forget him telling me, he goes, when he moved to Canfield, he had to tear that paint booth down and move it. And it cost him like $10,000.
Wow.
I was like, geez, really? For a paint booth?
There's 2 big companies that do paint booths. Now there's one big company because the other guy, oddly enough, got eaten by a shark when he was surfing.
Oh my God!
Literally,
really?
Wow. So you can imagine. You were busy already, and then
how many guys do you think you run into somebody and you go, hey, have you seen Bill lately? And he goes, nah, he got eaten by a shark.
Golly.
Yeah.
I guess they were laughing. We didn't expect that response. He's like, oh, yeah, what happened to Bobby? Got eaten by a shark.
Nobody expect that response. But it was the fact of the matter, you know, and they basically did all brand new paint booth installs, which it's a huge undertaking. You're cutting pits in the floor and there's ventilation through roofs and fire suppression. And so those companies got really behind in putting paint booths in for a long time. I'm sure they've recovered and I'm sure they've moved on with it. But, you know, when I get a lift, I have to have a lift serviced or repaired. I use a company out of Pittsburgh because we've all seen the cars falling on a lift or falling off a lift or a lift breaking. There is no way I'm going to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
So I pay professionals to do what they do. The paint booth, it was an old paint booth, a 1985 Binks paint booth that I traded some metal work on a car for. The guy was moving it out of his business, and
But it got you started.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of horse trading.
Yeah.
And it just worked out. And I don't paint. I may paint 2-3 times a month in the paint booth. But when I have a big, huge job, I mean, there's nowhere else to paint it. You just have to realign everything and go at it. And you need a paint booth to do that.
What's a paint booth? What's a decent one cost?
I have no clue. Could be over $100,000.
Yeah. For a decent one,
proper low therm or proper downdraft booth with
$100,000,
at least plus the install price. That doesn't include the install.
That's not the install price.
Go down a rabbit hole on paint booths. There's a lot of affordable paint booths. Or you can do a paint booth for $15,000 or $20,000 and another $5-10 to install it. But yeah, you can really
or Rick, you can get one of those blow up ones you put outside.
Yeah, I've seen guys do that too. Yeah,
but again,
blow up one.
There you go. I mean, again, it keeps it.
You're not doing it every day. You don't.
The tip I learned real good, whether it's right or not, when I'm in my garage, I have a 2-bay and then a bunch of other space, but my center bay, I've got a big exhaust fan. So I'll wall it off with tarps and I spray the ground with water to keep that dust down. And man, it comes out pretty dang good for being in a garage, but there's other tips you can do. Sure.
There's now a big thing is carpeting in paint booths. They put indoor outdoor carpeting, and it actually grabs the dust and it doesn't allow it to go back up. Now there's companies selling specific paint booth carpeting to, hold on to the dust, and you vacuum it like you're vacuuming your floor in your house.
God, I was the first thing in a shag carpet. Like, oh my God, no.
Yeah, whoa.
would you wet it down or anything?
Cool, man, but no. No, we don't wet it or anything.
You don't wet it or anything?
I don't have drainage in the back of my building there, so I don't bother with it. Plus, you shorten the life of a booth when you're wetting that too, because the water and the steel of the booth, whether it's galvanized or painted or what, it doesn't matter. That shortens the life of a booth. It starts rotting out.
Rob, what do you got back? What do you got back in the shop now? Anything going on?
Oh, let's see. 65 GTO convertible tri-power that we're doing some modern upgrades on. Full floor pan replacement, quarter pan replacements, trunk pan replacements. We have a 67 Pontiac Catalina 2+2.
Oh, that's the big one. I like
those. Are so beautiful.
What color?
Awesome, and it's Tahoe turquoise. It's gorgeous.
Oh,
it will be gorgeous. The guy started the restoration 35 years ago, and then 30 years ago he stopped it. They put new floors and quarter panels back when you couldn't buy.
Yeah, good stuff.
You were buying a car and cutting a car up to get and harvesting your parts from it.
Yep.
He bought new old stock quarter panels and fenders.
Oh wow!
This guy's been collecting parts for a long time.
Does he have the 3-piece rims on it?
What's that?
Does he have the 3-piece rims on it?
Not on this one. No,
those are beauty. Nope. I love those. Yeah, that's a beautiful style, though.
They really.
So let's go to getting the. And you mentioned, everybody used to have, when we had the space, you'd have that parts car and you'd cut the panels and whatever. Now you're replacing that. And you gave a list of panels that you're replacing: floor pans, trunk pans, so on. Hard to get those panels, and if they're not hard to get and you get them, because I did. And Greg knows this. I restored an old VW, bought panels. They never fit.
Never.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have that. They've gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
A lot better.
In the last 20 years, there's night and day.
I remember talking to a guy named Joe Pavlo. Joe Pavlo used to own Buckeye Paint Supply on Market Street.
Absolutely. Been there. Yep.
Okay. Joe says, I remember when we were making fender patch panels, we cut a fender apart, and then we would make a mold with concrete. We'd make the bottom mold with concrete. We'd make the top mold with concrete. And then we had this rail thing where we would smash a piece of sheet metal in between the two pieces to make something work. Yeah. And I remember back in the late 70s, I remember that stuff was not great. It was not great at all,
terrible.
But it was better than nothing.
Yeah.
So
it's better than rusted out dented metal. Better than, But
today, this stuff, I'm telling you, it's gorgeous, but we still have to work it. I'm a big stickler on perfect gaps and perfect fitments. And, there's a lot of aftermarket companies. I spend a lot of evening hours looking through the internet.
Where are most of the parts coming from now? They're not coming from Taiwan or anything or China. Are they?
They may go through American companies, but they're through. You couldn't make them with the monies that
it'd be 4 times as much the cost. The cost make it here. That's what the problem is.
Yeah. So let me ask you: is it? If you're redoing what year's the GTO you got there? What year was it?
GTO is a 65 GTO.
So let's say you got a 65 GTO, you're replacing the lower quarter panel or the trunk lid or the trunk flooring or something. And I got another one right next to it where those parts are good and maybe, it's a roller, there's nothing in it. Would you rather order the panels or cut them off that donor car?
Panels.
Very rarely have I gotten into a situation where I had a donor car that was better than the car I was.
Okay. All right.
And at that case, we look at, you may want to change bodies over.
Body swap there. Yeah.
Not that we want to, but God, if they're that bad, you look at dollars involved. You can get $25,000 to $30,000 into a metal job before you even spray it.
Yeah. Before you even hit it with mud or anything or primers.
So, when companies like Auto Metal Direct or Dynacorn come out with shells, body shells, Camaros, 57 Chevys. I see they're doing C10 trucks now.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh my, that's $20,000. That's cheap.
That's cheap for what you.
And you still have to fit it, and then you still have to title it, but it's cheaper than dealing with some of this stuff.
But
we search, we shake the shrubs, man. We look everywhere for pieces, parts, everywhere.
And you know what? I've got a quick question, and there's a debate. There's always been a debate. These panels come E-coded, from AMD. Or whoever you get a point. You know where I'm going. Mm-hmm. There's shops that you got to strip that off. And then there's shops, don't touch it. Just it's E-coded. It's electrified on the panel.
I'll say this. I just did a 66 Nova not too long ago. We put NOS fenders on it. The stamping on the back of that NOS fender, guess the date.
Oh, what year?
1992.
Really?
Correct. There's companies still making crash and collision parts. If there's a need, GM's still making them.
I didn't know that.
Now, they may not fit as well. I had to do some cutting and fitting to get it to fit perfectly, but the car we were building was, it was competing for all the marbles.
Okay.
It did very well at Good Guys in Columbus.
I had no idea you could still buy NOS parts.
There's companies like Checker. They're not around anymore, but when they quit building taxi cabs, they were building crash parts or even line parts for General Motors. Swing door assemblies, gates, oddball stuff that GM didn't or couldn't build, they built. But since that company folded, it's pretty much General Motors.
I always thought new old stock meant like new stock from like a 65 Pontiac or something from 65. I didn't think.
But if GM or Ford or Chrysler are still stamping them, that is new from them.
It's a new old stock part. It is from the company. It is of their standards.
So how would you know if it's a GM part then?
What's that?
How would you know GM made it then? Is it stamped?
You really don't.
Yeah, okay.
You really don't, unless you know what you're looking at. There's a date code on there called a Julian code, and the Julian code gives you line, time, and plant, so that if there's an issue, they can look at that little code. Maybe GM cars, they were in the trunk jam up by the hinges. There may be a 7 or 8 digit number stamped in there. They thought those were parts numbers. Those were not part numbers. Those were Julian codes that let you know what day and time that specific panel was made. So not that was very important in our world, but if you got into a car that was going to be a nut and bolt restoration, that the car was so important that when you got into the judging, they're looking for those numbers. When they look at the numbers, they want to say, well, this part was made, or there's no part here. So you put an aftermarket Japanese fender on this 70 Chevelle LS6. I came close to having to buy date-coded NOS parts for one car. We never ended up doing it, but it was a very rare car. And if we were going to change the quarters, I wanted the quarters from that time frame. 99.9% of the people out there, that kind of information it's irrelevant. It goes over their head, and it would never be important to them. But you also pay for them numbers. Yeah, you pay for that stuff.
So you're talking about replacing panels. Mm-hmm. Here's something that happened to me. I picked up a really nice, it was early mid 70s big Ford. It was either a Fairlane or a Galley. I forgot what model. Low mileage. It was one of those estate things. The person died, put it in the garage. I looked at it, still had the clear plastic on the seat covers. Was sitting forever, looked beautiful. Got my buddy with a flatbed, brought it home, went to jack it up. Sitting in a garage on a dirt floor, that entire underbody and frame was gone. Gone. You could poke a screwdriver through it. So when you but it looked. I mean, I just made a mistake. I didn't look at it good enough. Yep. But what about framework? How tough is that? I mean, panels I can see. You order them, you put them on. You're good at what you do. You got the talent. I mean, framework got to be a problem.
Here's the issue. We're in Northeast Ohio.
Everything's rusted.
There's two things I don't get to do in this town, and that's powder coat chassis parts, because they're going to be totally pitted and they're going to look like crap.
Wow.
And perfect frames under vehicles. I have to go to a guy on the other side of Columbus who goes out to Arizona to buy frames. So back in the day when you can buy, say for the 65 GTO, we'll say, convertible frame, back in the day, you can pick those up $1,000, $1,500 if the guy really wanted to squeeze you. I
Not
just
now.
paid close to $4,000 for that.
Wow.
And had to go get. There's another guy in Texas, and they won't sell them unless they're powder coated, because they powder coat, blast and powder coat everything. And there's still a little damage here and there. So even though it's powder coated, you have to treat it like a primer and repaint the whole frame to fix the issues that you may have to fix, if we're going to that level of a restoration.
Yeah. And you know what? I lost my train of thought. So John, go ahead.
Well, I guess you're purchasing a new frame.
We don't want to patch frames, but we will patch frames, small areas. But if I get into one if it's soft in one area, it's going to be soft in a lot of areas.
Well, I was thinking about when I was doing the CJ7s, the rear boots always rusted out on them.
Oh, yeah.
And you could actually purchase just the rear boots, and everyone knows, and my friend became Nick the welder on Glenwood Avenue. Yep. You take it down there, he'd weld the boots on.
Yes.
And so I was thinking of frame repair, but I think you'd be better off, and especially on a car that looks good, and like that Ford that I sold, a guy out of Warren bought it, and he said he had a frame at home, so he was just going to lift everything up and drop it on the frame.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that would be the way to go. But you're saying that those frames that you get are out west. You're not going to find
out west. There may be a little bit of pitting underneath where the battery is.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
You're right. Yeah, and you may have a bit of tow hook damage. Maybe it went off the road. But this guy I buy him from, he's got 3 old frame machines set up for Chevelles. He's got them set up for El Caminos. He's got them set up for what's the other big body car? Impalas. So when he buys them, he ships them, but he brings them back. He stacks them like cordwood on the back of his trailers, and he brings them back. He mounts them on there. He'll take El Camino frames, cut the 4 inches out of them, and shorten the back so they're more. He's finding a lot more of those now. They're just going away. There's nothing.
I was going to say, when are these going to dry up?
Imagine being the frame guy that has to go out there and pluck a car apart with the backhoe in a lot, and then bring it back. Pluck all the suspension out of it, stack up all the frames.
It's a lot of time.
Bring them back, and a guy's trying to beat them up over price. guy tells me the price, I pay the price because I know what he went through to get it. And I can't buy them around here.
One of the things is, I was, every summer my parents lived, we lived out in Arizona. They had a house out in Arizona, a house in PA. So I was out there every summer, but, driving out there every summer, there was cars everywhere in the desert. They were all over the place, when I was younger. Yep. Now there's nothing. There's nothing. They've all been plucked up, and it's like, where are these, that's going to dry up some point.
I'm amazed at my two frame guys that my suppliers, they'll show a whole, there's Mark Boer in Texas, and then there is Jim Webster in Columbus. Now, Jim is the closest. So when I need stuff, that's who I go to, and I pay his price, and he's got a whole field full of this stuff.
So no one reproduces these frames?
Pieces, parts. You might have luck with the Chevelles 66 through 72 because they use those for circle track racing. Yeah. So there's sections of those frames you can buy that had to be of factory appearing for the race car guys. When they would inspect the frames, they had to be stock frames. So there's pieces, parts, and chassis pieces you can buy, but you can't buy side rails. You can't buy front rails. You can't buy over the hump in the back. You can't buy any of that stuff.
Boy, what a good business that would be.
Believe me, I've thought about it.
What a great business.
Like with all my spare time.
Yeah. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Well, no, that's cool. What about I see, again, I hate to say I see on TV. Yeah. That's like you heard it on the internet.
I spend a lot of time watching.
I'm not even going to get into that one. Go ahead, John.
What about building the frames? I mean, building a whole new frame,
Well, they do that. There's a guy in Cleveland. His name's Boris Marianovsky, and he has a company called Street Machinery. He is probably the single biggest buyer of aftermarket frames. Now, they make custom frames for these cars. You have Mustang 2 front suspensions in them. You have, you can put independent rear suspensions in them. They're all mandrel bent. There is modifying you have to do to the floors of the cars. They don't fit perfectly. But for these trucks and stuff, I just quoted a job out for a 55 Ford pickup with complete rack and pinion front suspension, A-arms, Mustang 2 front suspension, Ford 9-inch housing and axles, and that was $15,000.
Well, you know what? That's not bad.
I get the money tied up in these chassis. If I'm smoothing one out, if I have one that's pitted front to back and I have to smooth it out, it's every bit of $10,000 to $12,000.
Oh yeah. What and how do you smooth those out? If you've got a frame that's pitted, how do you smooth that out?
First, we send them out and have them blasted or dip stripped. There's two forms: blasting or dip stripping.
Yeah.
Then we get back the real, what I call having the coming to Jesus meeting. What are we going to do with it now? Are you going to commit to this, or do you want to replace it? And they usually, I don't want to replace it. Let's fix that one. Okay. Once I see more than 2 holes, I don't fix them. I'm done with them. I'll go look for another chassis. But it is put an epoxy primer the same day that they blast it. Me and the same blaster have been dealing back and forth for 20 years. If not more. So when he blasts it, Bob, I just finished it. Come get it. So I fly up there to Rootstown. I pick it up. I bring it back. I put it in epoxy so it can hold in state for however long. You can't leave bare metal longer than 24 hours or it micro rusts underneath the epoxy. And then we start the bodywork process. It's just like a car. We'll grind down the high spots and we'll fill the low spots and we'll sand it flat. We'll go through 2 rounds of primer. We'll use first a polyester primer. We'll sand that completely after we do the bodywork to it. And then we top it off with 2 coats of black urethane primer. And we sand that completely. So look at the hours we're doing.
Yeah.
Each round of priming is a week in between each one.
Yeah.
So
do you use regular filler on that? Regular filler?
Body filler, yeah.
Just regular body, not a fiberglass or anything?
Well, no, because on a chassis, it's thin pits, it's very light pits. Okay. Icing, there's a product called icing we use. It's a thin polyester plastic, and we'll use that for the majority of it. But it's a thin swipe, and we're DA sanding and block sanding and hand sanding, and you name it, whatever tool there is to get in them nooks and crannies, wrapping sandpaper around paint sticks and getting it in there, doing it.
Yeah.
But add it up, So, and at the end of that, we sand that down, prep it for paint. It's base coat, clear coat, and we use a satin additive or a flat additive. It depends on how much you put in, depends on the gloss level you want.
Okay.
But it's very durable. It's like the paint on the car.
And I got a question for you, and I've asked other body guys this. I haven't dove into this realm yet of body panel adhesive instead of welding. Yep. Do you use that as well, or do you weld?
Like I said, I came out of the heavy collision industry. I worked for a company called Dunn's International, and then it was True to Form. Now it's Gerber Collision. I didn't work for Gerber. Then Ed's Auto Works in Warren. We did modern collision, and we cut those cars apart and we had to put new parts back in. There's rules to the glue. You can glue a roof skin on, but you better weld the corners. And this was, now keep in mind, this is 15 years ago. You could weld the corners and glue the rest of it on. All the hem seams all the way around can be glued, clamped and glued. The glue has little glass BBs in it that you can't see, but it holds the panel apart enough so you're not squishing out all the glue, which gives you the adhesion rate that you need. If you took a piece of tape and you laid it on something and you pulled it sideways, you couldn't pull it off. You would rip it before you pulled it off. But if you pulled it this way, it came right off. So that's why they want you to weld and glue.
Okay.
Truck bed sides. You can weld the whole length of the rail. You can weld around the wheel lip, but you better weld the back corner and the gate area and the front side, because those beds twist and they'll crack. And that's it. It's over. So when people want to glue stuff in, there's rules. And if you don't know the rules, you're going to make a mess.
That's what I was wondering, because I've never used it, but I've heard good things about it. But
now they have collision. The collision world uses squeeze type spot welders to reproduce the factory spot welds that can squeeze right through the glue and create that strong weld. So now you are not only glued, but you're spot welded. And that stands up to the factory recommendations: Ford, Chrysler, Toyota, Honda.
Never heard of that.
Yep.
Wow.
So it's amazing and every time we get a guest on the show to talk about a certain subject, it's amazing on how some people just assume that things are done, easy. And then when we get professionals on like you, Bob, you start talking about how deep it goes, how involved it goes.
ICAR certifications.
It's amazing.
ASE certifications. I sat there every one of those stinking classes, but you know what? It really pays dividends in the long run, because here's something we do that nobody else does. We give lifetime warranties with our work. Wow. I can honestly, full-heartedly stand behind my work and tell you, for the life of you owning that car, that paint's going to be. I tell my customers, you own the car, but I own the paint on the car. You don't sand it, you don't touch it. You wax it, you drive it, you wash it.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know, and I don't know if you've got any customers. There's some people that drive their classics in not so great weather, and if they do that for years, how is that going to hold up?
Just like the modern car would, unless you go after it and maintain it, it's going to fall apart just like anything else.
Yep.
But if you pay the price and you go after it with all due diligence, there is no reason why something like that you can't. My Camaro, I had a 68 Camaro that I recently sold. I wrecked it in 91, and it took me to 2000 to get it back on the road again. New quarter panels, new frame, new fenders, new everything. And I approached that with my knowledge of what I knew. That paint looked as good the day I sold it, aside from nicks and little scratches here and there. It looked as good the day I sold it, which was in 2021. That's 20 plus years of a paint job. So from my own car, living with it, driving it, beating on it, I can honestly say that my paint will last that long, because Sherwin-Williams stands behind what I do. If I do it the way they tell me to do it, and we go through trainings and courses with them, they stand behind it. So I say I'm offering a warranty, but they're offering the warranty.
Yeah.
So if somebody brings a car and says, hey, here's, I picked up this, 69 Mustang, and hey, I want it to look good, but it's going to be a daily driver. I'm not looking for trophies for shows. I want it to look nice. We're going to drive it in the summertime. I live here in Ohio. We may do a little fall drives. Do you actually says, well, here's what you want. I can give you a X amount of dollars.
I'm going to shoot for the moon every time. I'm going to shoot for the moon.
Okay.
But I back down. I say, what's your thoughts? What's your budget? Where are you aiming? Are you realistic? Are you not realistic? If it's a strip and a paint, and I only offer the lifetime warranties on strip and paints from the ground up, it has to be our products from the ground up. That's the only way we go about that. We do touch-ups. We do, I do touch-ups. I do resprays. We do work for the local shops in the area. We do stuff that nobody wants to do. Try taking your classic car and going to any one of the local shops, either the mega shops around here or the local little shops, and try to get some work done.
No, nobody does rust
around, and they're probably going to put my number in your hand.
Yeah, and nobody does rust repair anymore.
Let's
put it. Nobody.
That's gone. Yeah,
no, that's long gone.
Sake, I just did a 2015 Suburban that only because I promised the guy 3 years ago when I had a crew, and I just finished his 70 Chevelle LS5 396 4-speed positive rear end. We finished that car for him, and he said, take a look at my Suburban.
Oh God.
Okay. So I look, and it's of course in all the areas, in the wheel well, in the quarter panel, in the lower rockers. Everything else looked good. Well, fast forward 4 years, 3 years, outer rocker panels, quarter panel sections, inner wheel wells, inner supports, inner lock supports. And
that's a newer car too, huh?
Close to $8,000 later, we
figured that's 9 years. It's 9 years old now. It's not. We think of it as newer.
I thought that would hold up better.
100,000 miles on it, but listen, the guy, it ran perfectly. So is he going to spend $80,000 and go buy a new vehicle? No, he's not. No, he's retired now. Him and his wife live down south, and they have a cabin over in Pennsylvania in the woods. He's going to drive that vehicle until it needs $4,000 or $5,000 worth of other work, and he's going to drive that and fix it again. So
I get it.
I get a lot of it, but unfortunately, I don't do it anymore. I won't do rocker jobs.
No, it's a lot of work.
I've got 7 or 8 restorations sitting there that I'm putting off to do a fender bender, or I'm putting it off to do that. So a couple of weeks ago, I made the decision. That's it. I'm done. I'll
Bob,
my other friends in the business that are out there, and I'm not one of those guys that will beat down a local body shop or something. Those guys are doing it. They're out there doing it. Better yet, anything else, when I need something, I call them. They open the doors.
Yeah.
They're more than happy to, Bob, come use our paint booth. Or do you need, I had a pickup truck, had aluminum bedside. Well, I got to turn down the aluminum bedside because the gun for those is $12,000 to rivet those back on. I'm not, I don't need it.
Yeah.
If I get one bedside a year, I'll send it to my friend.
Yeah.
Would you work on, I have a Corvette. You do fiberglass work?
Absolutely. I used to work for a shop in Cleveland. It was called Classic Auto Works. And Classic Auto Works has now transformed into Stainless Works, full custom exhaust company. But back in the day, we used to build a 36 Plymouth out of fiberglass. So I used to buy my glass in 55-gallon drums, and our roll, the 2-foot big, thick roll of fiberglass mat. And believe me, when I was a young guy doing that, I was probably 22, 23, building complete bodies and fenders and running boards and stuff like that. And that was a lot of chemicals. It was a lot of chemicals. When my daughter was born perfect, I thank God.
You always wonder. It's like,
yeah, really.
You know what?
Always think of that. All these chemicals,
Remember all the school glue you ate?
I was talking.
Hey, Bob, I didn't do body work, but growing up in the 60s, I worried about chemicals also.
Oh, yeah, I was talking to somebody about that the other day.
You did.
Yeah, wrong chemicals. Yeah,
where are you gonna get them?
It was had nothing to do with fiberglass work.
Yeah, well,
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you. Is there any really cool cars out there now that you did and you're still proud of, and they're pulling in trophies or people know about? What's the coolest car you ever did?
The next one.
I like that. I like that answer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
actually there's a couple cars. We finished up a car for Carl Rossler, the transmission fella.
Oh yeah.
And it was a 66 Nova, and it did very well in the show circuit, but it just wasn't him. He's a drag race guy. He's a get in the car and drive a car guy, and this car was done NOS. Old stock parts.
We interviewed him with that. What was that? Starfire, Greg? Remember that one?
Oh yeah.
That's when I talked about doing that car too, he's like, well, he was just thinking about buying it. He bought it at McCacken a couple years ago, and he said, "You don't believe it? It's all original. It don't need much." I said, "Carl, you crack one bolt on the car, and then it leads to the next issue, and then that part's clean, and the other part needs." So he didn't use me to do it because I knew how it was going to turn out, and I didn't want to get involved. But they put a paint job on the car, and it's gorgeous. The turbocharged 6-cylinder, if I'm not mistaken, or it was a small V8. I don't remember.
I thought it was a V8. Yeah, if I remember.
Which one?
Right.
The Starfire.
The Starfire. That was
it was something special about it.
Yeah, it had
turbocharged back in the day.
Yeah, it had that special juice you put in it. Wasn't it that?
Yeah, I remember
that. And it was anyway, you had to buy it special.
We did his Nova. And then he says, "Listen, I got a guy that wants to buy it." He said, "What do you think I should do?" He's here. I'm like, "Well, he's there with the trailer, I don't know." I said, "Honestly, you worry too much about the car. It's in a bubble in his garage. He's got to wipe it and wipe the bolts with oil and all that stuff. It's the whole thing." And Carl's get in the car and drive the car. He's got an awesome car collection, some of the nicest stuff you've seen, but they're drivers. He uses them. I said, "That car causes you too much stress. I would let it go. Get your money out of it." And he did, and he was happy he did it.
Yeah.
But that car did very well. At the Good Guys show in Columbus, Street Machine of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, Street Machine or Classic.
Some other.
It was one of these of the year awards,
Yeah.
And then they take that winner from that show, and at the end of the year, it competes with all the other show winners. Of course, we lost to a Mopar, but not that I don't do Mopar.
So now we know where you're leaning towards.
Well,
so
I was born and raised a GM guy.
Okay.
Shop's full of GM cars, but only because, hey, I got a Chevelle too, or I got a Nova too, or I got a Camaro too. And, it just is what it is.
Just to show you the diversity of this show, our last guest was a Mopar guy.
Yeah.
So, you know what? That's all he did was Mopars. Yeah.
I worked in a collision shop and I met this guy. And this guy, him and his brother were Mopar guys. And everybody knows the Mopar guy, Bob, who lived out on 224 in Canfield out by Myers Equipment. And
absolutely.
On the left-hand side of the road, there were Mopars parked all over. The barns were full of Mopars.
I heard stories about this guy.
Diplomats. I mean, it was just, Bob was amazing. Bob, but
I heard that he had Charger
and
parts stacked in that barn back there.
Every bit of everything. But when Bob and his wife split, Bob got out of there and the cars sat there forever, but then they were selling the property. So Bill had to drag.
I got a story about that real quick.
Drag cars out of there, drag them on trailers, drag them in pickup trucks and pieces, parts, and rotted everything. There was very few cars that were, by the time Bill drug them over to his property in Leavittsburg, very few that were any good. And then I stored probably 12 of them, old darts, the real goofy looking early 60s darts.
Now he was into the police cars too, wasn't he? Real quick.
Oh, those are his daily drivers.
Yeah, here's my quick story about him. Back in the 90s, my one friend of mine, he is into Mopars, he's Chargers, he loves them, and he's now into the police cars. But we stopped by his house one day, and he was not home. And his wife comes out. If you can get these damn cars out of here, she was just going off about him. We were laughing. It's like, oh my God, this guy's in deep trouble.
I think Bob was a collector. Bob didn't sell shit. Yeah. And then people were stealing stuff out of his barns. Bob had it all. He had wing cars. It didn't matter. It was all in there. Pieces, parts were showing up missing, and it was starting to become. And Bob lost his mind a little bit at the end. But what a great guy! Well, his brother Bill. Me and Bill's still around. He lives in Colorado now. But Bill opened my eyes to Dodge. And the best thing Bill showed me one time, he says, "You see this dashboard? It was for like a '69 Charger." And he said, "That's a Dodge dashboard." I said, "Yeah." He flipped it over. It said Ford underneath. He says, "I get into so many arguments with guys about this, Yeah. He said, even Fords want to be Dodges. Ford and the big three would buy from each other.
I always said that. If you look at the designs of the back of the 60s, they always copied each other. There's always got same curves.
They still do it nowadays.
They share ideas.
They would buy metal from each other. They always had the same. Back in 67, I learned this little bit today. Back in 66, I think GM had a transmission plant fire. And I was talking to Kenny Thomas, who does all our rear axles and manual transmissions. He says he had one. He goes, his dad bought it at the auction and they brought it home. He says, it needed a clutch. He said, so I get underneath the thing and it had a Ford top loader transmission.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, he goes, and then he explained to me. I says, "You're kidding me." He said, "No, you had a choice of a Dodge transmission or a Ford transmission or another transmission, but there was no GM automatic or manual transmission."
It sounds like an AMC. My buddy had a 77 Matador wagon, which back then we thought was the stupidest thing in the world. Now it's so cool. But it had a
you see those.
It had a Mopar 360 in it. Mm-hmm. A GM Turbo 350 and a Ford 9-inch rear end in it. And that was from the factory.
It had a GM steering column in it. I guarantee you it had a GM windshield wiper motor in it. Power steering box is probably a GM Saginaw box.
Yeah.
I have a car in the shop right now that is a 69 AMC Rambler Scrambler.
I love those.
Which one's the Scrambler?
By our local engine builder, Jason Diver. And it's going to be, it's one of my favorites.
Which one's the Scrambler? Is that
red,
the
white, and blue?
Okay. Rambler. Okay. It's a Rambler, but the Scrambler, the sport model.
Rambler.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we got only got a couple more minutes here before we have to wrap up. I know. Well, that's what another hour is for later on in the, later on in the podcast. But, we all have our loves, the one car that sticks out in your mind that you've restored that from all of time that really sticks in your mind.
I started my restoration career at a shop in Cleveland, like I said, and we did pretty nice restorations, very nice restorations. But man, if I have to think, when I came back here, I went into import restoration. We did Lamborghini, Ferrari, Aston Martin. We didn't do a lot of Porsche. He didn't like Porsches. He didn't like German cars. But we did a lot of that stuff. And one of my favorites of all time is a 120 Jaguar Roadster.
Cool.
Cool. Not the convertible, not the coupe, but the Roadster. Unfortunately, I don't fit into them.
Yeah.
And they knew that too, because the years coming, they made them 4 inches wider and 4 inches longer.
Yeah.
The 120, the 140, and the 150 each year was 2 inches this way bigger than that.
Yeah.
But I really thoroughly enjoyed my import restoration days.
That's cool.
We would
That's
get them
pretty
on
cool.
And you know what? For Rick's pumpkin that he's filming, or
Halloween's right around the corner, man.
Well, yeah, Halloween's coming. So get your kids out and get some candy, and make sure you eat half of it yourself.
It safe. Be safe. Yeah.
Be safe out there.
Little John up here.
Yep, Little John. And to our friends in Florida, John. We're praying for you. This has been hell on you guys. Yeah. We know it. We've seen it. And, we're all for you. So for Rick Herrera, John Lesaganich, my name's Greg Roten, and we will see you
down the road.